we're diving into a true ghost ship story, one of the most famous and baffling maritime mysteries to ever come out of the South Pacific. It's about a vessel found floating, totally empty, with absolutely no trace of its 25 passengers and crew. This is the incredible story of the MV Joyita. Okay, so let's set the scene. It's just after dawn, November 10th, 1955. The captain of a merchant ship called the Tuvalu is sailing near Fiji when he spots something really weird on the horizon. It's another boat, but it's not moving right. It's just drifting, silent, battered, like a ghost on the water. As the Tuvalu gets closer, the picture gets way more disturbing. The ship is tilted so far over to one side that its railing is literally dipping into the ocean. The deck is partly underwater, the main cabin area is damaged, and there's just this profound, eerie silence. Absolutely no one is in sight. The name on the hull reads Joyita, and when a recovery crew finally musters the courage to climb aboard, they find it completely deserted. This is the moment that kicks off the one single question that has haunted this mystery for decades. Where in the world did 25 people go? So, to even begin to understand how 25 people could just vanish from a ship in the middle of the ocean, we have to rewind. We've got to go back to the beginning of the Joyita's last fateful voyage. It all kicks off on October 3rd, 1955. The Joyita leaves Samoa, headed for the Tokelau Islands. Now, she was already a day late leaving port, and, this is critical, she was limping along on only one of her two engines. The trip was supposed to take 2 days, but she never showed up. By October 6th, the alarm bells are ringing, and the Royal New Zealand Air Force launches this massive search operation. They scour 100,000 square miles of ocean and find nothing, not a single trace. The search is called off, and for a whole month, it's like the Joyita just sailed off the edge of the world. Until, of course, she's found on November 10th, adrift, empty, and a whopping 600 miles off course. But you know, this isn't just a story about a ship. It's a story about the 25 souls on board. You had 16 crew members and 9 passengers, and this group included a government official, a guy who bought dried coconut, copra, and was carrying a ton of cash, and this is just tragic, 2 little kids only 3 and 11 years old. There was even a doctor on board heading out on a mercy mission to perform an emergency amputation. Now here's what's absolutely staggering. This whole voyage was reckless from the get-go. The captain, a guy named Dusty Miller, was apparently deep in debt and was desperate for the money from this trip. So desperate, he set sail even though he knew his port engine clutch was shot, his radio didn't work right, and a pump was broken. The stage was set for a disaster before they even left the harbor. Okay, now let's get to the evidence they found on the ghost ship itself, because this is where the story goes from just mysterious to genuinely bizarre. It's a scene filled with really strange clues and some truly baffling contradictions. So the recovery team finds the doctor's bag on deck and, inside, a scalpel and 4 bloody bandages. Weird. They also see this makeshift canvas awning, which suggests people had been trying to get some shade on deck for a while. But it's what's missing that's even stranger. The ship's logbook? Gone. The sextant and other key navigational tools? Vanished. The captain's guns? Also gone. And, most importantly, all 3 of the ship's life rafts, plus its little dinghy, were missing. It looked like the ship had been systematically abandoned. So you might be thinking, well, why didn't they just radio for help? The thing is, they tried. The radio was tuned to the International Distress Channel. But here's the cruel twist of fate. They couldn't have known that a tiny break in the aerial cable, which had been carelessly painted over during some old repair job, had cut its broadcast range down to just 2 miles. Any desperate call for help they sent out would have just vanished into the empty ocean. And then there's this really chilling detail. The ship's electric clocks, all of them, were frozen at exactly 10:25. And the switches for the cabin and navigation lights were all flipped to the on position. This gives us this eerie, frozen moment in time. Whatever happened, whatever catastrophic event knocked out the power, probably happened at 10:25 p.m., plunging everyone into total darkness and chaos. Now, here's the single most important fact about the Joyita, the one thing that makes this whole mystery so maddening. Despite all its mechanical problems, the ship itself was designed to be virtually unsinkable. Its hull was lined with a massive 640 cubic feet of cork, and it was carrying 80 huge empty oil drums as cargo. All of that added up to incredible buoyancy. The ship could flood, it could tilt, it could look terrifying, but it was not going to sink. And don't just take my word for it. Listen to this quote from the harbor master at Suva, Captain E.L. James, an expert who was looking at the situation back then. He says it perfectly. He's just stating a fact. The ship was safe. It was never going to the bottom. And yet all the evidence points to one thing. They abandoned ship. They left their safest refuge. And this is the question, right? This is what has haunted investigators for over 65 years. Why on earth would 25 people, led by an experienced captain, trade a damaged but buoyant ship for tiny, flimsy life rafts in the middle of the vast Pacific Ocean? It makes no sense. It defies all logic.
So, what could possibly make 25 people do the one thing they absolutely should not have done? Let's play detective and walk through some of the major theories that have cropped up over the years.
All right, theory number one is a big one. It's the mutiny theory, and it was actually put forward by the author Robin Maugham, who ended up buying the wreck of the Joyita years later.
So here's how the mutiny scenario plays out. A pipe breaks and the engine room starts taking on water. The weather gets worse and the first mate, an American named Chuck Simpson, starts to panic. He demands they turn back, but Captain Miller, who needs that payday, refuses. An argument turns into a fight, and Miller gets badly hurt. Maybe that's where the bloody bandages come from. The first mate, now in charge and freaking out, mistakenly believes the ship is doomed and orders everyone to abandon ship. They all get into the rafts and are just lost to the sea.
Okay, theory number two is pretty similar, but it centers on the captain getting hurt through an accident, not a fight.
So in this version, as the ship floods and lurches around in the dark, Captain Miller has some kind of bad accident. He gets knocked out, or maybe even worse. Now remember, he's the one person who knows for sure that the ship is unsinkable. Without him there to calm everyone down and take charge, mass panic just takes over. The crew and passengers see the water rising, they think they're going down, and they flee into the life rafts, sealing their own tragic fate. And of course, with a mystery this deep, you're going to get some wild theories. There was talk of modern-day pirates who attacked the ship for the cargo and all that cash on board. There were also theories kind of fueled by post-war paranoia about illegal Japanese fishing boats or even rogue World War II soldiers still hiding out on islands, the idea being that the Joyita crew saw something they weren't supposed to see. Someone even cooked up a wild Cold War theory about a Soviet submarine kidnapping everybody. But it's really important to say there is zero hard evidence for any of these more sensational ideas. But the mystery of what actually happened on the Joyita isn't even the whole story. It's also about the people who were lost and how their story continues to cast this long, painful shadow, even today. I just want you to look at this number for a second. 19. It's just a number, but it represents a really profound and, frankly, a lingering injustice right at the heart of this whole story. 19. That's the number of victims from Tokelau, Samoa, and Kiribati who all these decades later have still never been officially declared dead. Now, the 6 Europeans who were on board, their families were eventually able to get them that legal status. But for the 19 Pacific Islanders, there's been no closure thanks to what sources basically describe as bureaucratic apathy and legal finger-pointing. This quote from Luther Taloa, a community leader in Tokelau and a descendant of one of the victims, just says it all. For years, he and others have been campaigning for this simple act of dignity. It's not about legal paperwork anymore. As he says, it's about the principle of equality. It's about finally giving these families the official respect and closure that they've been denied for over 60 years. So while stories of pirates and submarines are exciting, the real story here seems to be a much more human one. A failing ship, a captain who was taken out of commission, and a panicked crew who just didn't realize that the damaged vessel they were on was actually their only real lifeboat. But that leads us to a final, really important question. We're all fascinated by the puzzle of the empty ship, but can we ever truly say a mystery like this is solved when the victims themselves aren't given equal remembrance and respect? It's a thought that ties an old sea mystery to a very real, very current human story.